Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Big box retailers, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a bill in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. Senate Bill 1838 would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, visit handsoffmyrewards.com and tell them to oppose credit card routing legislation paid for by the Electronic Payments Coalition.
Hey, you got any gum?
Yeah, check my backpack.
What's this?
Oh, that's naloxone. It can reverse an opioid overdose. I decided to always keep it on me after my friend almost died. It saved his life.
Oh, wow. I'm so sorry. That makes me want to have it with me, too.
You totally should. Check the pharmacy. It was actually really easy to get, and it's easy to use.
I definitely will. Thanks.
Naloxone saves lives. Learn more at cdc.gov/stop-overdose.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello everyone, the English county cricket season is set to start this week. So to get you all in the mood, I caught up with Gloucestershire and England wicketkeeper batsman James Bracey. In this podcast, James reflects candidly on his career, which led him from playing from Loughborough MCCU in 2018 to the full England side in 2021 against New Zealand at Lord's. Hello, James. Thanks for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having us.
Well, the new season starts next week as we're recording. What have you been up to during the winter?
Yeah, so I've had a few busy winters the last 2 or 3, touring and going various places with ECB and the Lions and obviously the England side. So had a pretty chilled start and did a few weeks at home. Bit of technical work that I wanted to get done, so I was just doing that indoors at Bristol. And then spent the end of December, Christmas, January, February in Melbourne playing some grade cricket to prep outside for this summer.
I wonder whether you've been playing some cricket. You're not involved in any T20 franchises?
No, not quite yet. So that's definitely on the bucket list if I can sort of push myself into the reckoning. But at the moment, yeah, Australia is obviously a great option for that sort of thing. As you know, their club cricket is strong, and I'm able to go over there, thankfully. And they're happy to put me up and stuff, which is great.
What was it like being a POM playing against all these Aussies?
It's not as bad as the horror stories that people tell you. I think at that level, you know, it was they were pretty friendly. You get a couple that try and get into and use the old, you know, POM English Aussie rivalry against you, but you know, generally it was all good. They're not as bad as, you know, we usually make out.
And you've been following Bristol Rovers from a distance then?
Yeah, I've watched most of their games, stupidly waking up in the night to watch them. Since I left, I think at Christmas, they just went on a downward spiral, sadly. So yeah, followed them from a distance and watched them a couple of times when I got back.
So you actually go and watch them live as well? Yeah.
Yeah, we went, they had 2 home games last week or the week before. Went to both of those, lost 2-0, both of them. So quickly brought me back down to earth of, you know, glad they haven't got a game for a couple of weeks now.
Well, they're not going to go down. So
yeah, they're floating in mid-table. So to be fair, with us going up last year, I think, you know, that's pretty good to stay up in on our first time of asking.
Well, let's get back to the cricket. Talk a little bit about your career, your Test career, and the 2023 season, which you're looking forward to. You made your debut for Gloucestershire in 2016, and you were also part of the Loughborough MCCU. How much did that help your development?
Yeah, it was huge. I think that was probably the turning point for me. Went to Loughborough 2015 after not being offered a contract. And I probably knew that I wasn't quite ready. Wasn't picked by Loughborough really in 2015. So, you know, I was pushing, I was just turning 19 and didn't really have too much going on in terms of a contract coming up. I played a bit in Gloucester's twos, but still it was sort of doing my degree and starting to plan really if cricket didn't come to fruition, what I was going to do next, really. So 2016 was probably the breakthrough. Played in Loughborough's side, did pretty well. Got that one game at the end of 2016, which was a really good learning experience. Didn't score any runs, but came up against a good side in Sussex. And that sort of just propelled me on to, 17, 18, 19, where, I went from strength to strength.
What did you do your degree in?
I did sports science and business management in my undergraduate. And then I'm currently studying a master's in psychology.
That's just the ticket for a wicketkeeper, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, we're known to be crazy, so it's good to understand it a little bit more why that is.
So, are you one of these noisy wicket keepers? Like we always quote Paul Nixon. I know he's packed up quite a few years ago, but
no, I'd actually say I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm firmly a believer of, as soon as I open my mouth and start to give a bit, it will come around and bite me in the ass. So I like to stay a little bit quieter and keep my vocals to stuff concerning us.
Well, as you said, 2018, 2019, you got 819 runs and 745 runs in 2019. You scored a century in your fourth county championship match. And it wasn't long before you then got picked for the Lions in 2020 in Australia. Yeah.
I mean, I think I was probably I'd sort of got a little bit fortunate with all my selections, because I think it was around the time where Ed Smith came in and started to sort of, the Lions became a platform for younger players to come through and make the step up, rather than, it being purely the next best team. So I sort of fitted into that bracket quite nicely. I'd had a couple of, as you said, decent years, but not sort of breaking the bank. And I managed to get those opportunities, which was amazing. And that tour of Australia was awesome. We won every game. We played at the MCG, won there. I got a few runs I was keeping, and it was sort of a really good, again, platform for me to then push on up towards the next accolade.
Yeah, as you said, you beat Australia A in the 4-day match. You got 65, you got 4 catches, and you're playing with Zach Crawley, Dominic Sibley, Dan Lawrence, Ollie Robinson, just to name a few. Yeah,
and they all sort of, obviously, I think there was a few who'd already played as well, like Bess and Craig Overton, Jennings. So it was a pretty stacked side, which was good to be a part of, and obviously a lot of them have kicked on to play Test cricket as well. So it was good to, I think I made my debut with Zach, Sibbers and Ollie. So it was obviously a good time to be part of the setup, and it's good to see, Robbo in particular really, really smashing Test cricket and going all the way.
And you were playing against Marcus Harris, who plays for Gloucestershire.
Yeah, that was before he came to us. That was before he went to Leicester, I think. So, I remember him. I've spoken to him about it. I remember he ran down and tried to hit Bessie into the middle of next week and got bowled. So, reminded me of that. But he's obviously gone from strength to strength as well, and played a bit for Australia. And I think he's sort of in the hat to play this summer again as well.
And this was early 2020, so the world's then sort of starting to think there's going to be lockdowns, and you must have come home, and then very shortly after that, you're in lockdown.
Yeah, they moved our flight a couple of days earlier because they were starting to panic about border closures and that sort of thing. So I think we arrived back mid-March, and then got back, and within 2 or 3 days we were locked down. So we got pretty fortunate there.
Yeah, I think everyone remembers it's 23rd of March when we were actually locked down. What was it like then for a cricketer? The season was not going to start. You never knew when you were going to start again for a while, did you? Yeah,
there was lots of, it's all a bit of a blur. I don't really remember all the details, but I just remember there being lots of chat, lots of meetings, lots of COVID protocols getting thrown at us, lots of unrest about, when it was going to start, whether it was going to be 2021 before we got to play again. And then I think, was it, again, I sort of got I got fortunate, bigger squads were then being picked, and there was opportunities with the COVID England bubble, which I was allowed to go back to training earlier than the rest, and I was allowed to go outdoors and do training before the rest and all this sort of stuff. So, it's probably a little bit better for me. I think it was sort of maybe 2 months before I was, back out there training properly again, whereas the other lads had to wait probably another 6 weeks on top of that.
So were you living at home with parents at the time in lockdown?
Yeah, so I'd literally just bought a flat and I was hoping to move in when it all kicked off, which obviously didn't happen. So yeah, I was with my parents. My brother had moved out by then, so it wasn't too bad. It was pretty comfortable.
And as you said, you then got picked for this extended, I think, 55-man squad, and then you were involved in a 30-man squad for the England summer.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, it was my first taste, obviously, of the full setup. I think it was me and sort of 7 or 8 of the lads I'd been away with that winter. Had sort of got the call up as such. And it was sort of a case of just go and enjoy it. I think the first stage was about 10 days of training and a couple of squad games and that sort of thing. And it was sort of enjoy that and didn't expect too much more. But I knew that it was going to be a case of then rattling down to 24 and then rattling down to 18 and then rattling down to whatever test squads they picked. So it was almost a case of like a trial basis, get as far as possible sort of thing. And, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, you played for this Josh Butler's 11, or there was about 15, I think, played, against another 15 for the Ben Stokes 11 and got 85.
Yeah. I mean, again, I sort of, when they said there was going to be a squad game, I sort of went through all the players there and where I was sort of going to fit in, because I knew that obviously Folkes and Butler would have been the keepers. Bairstow was there as well. So there's 3 keepers probably pushing ahead of me. So I was looking at the batters, and then you obviously had Burns, you had Denley at the time, you had Jennings, you had Sibley. So there's lots of openers there as well. And yeah, I managed to find myself opening the batting, which was perfect. So it was a good chance to show them what I don't think many of the coaches had seen a huge amount of me batting. So yeah, it was a good start to set a good example. And
Jimmy Anderson was on the Ben Stokes 11.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think Jimmy Stokes. I think they had Saqib, Craig Overton. So it was a pretty good attack. Jack Leach. So yeah, it was. I don't think there were going to be many bad bowlers, but there was some pretty darn good ones there to challenge me.
And as a result of that, you were then part of the England bubble all summer.
Yeah.
You say, yeah, it must have been. You're in hotels and more hotels, and
yeah, it was
up to your room, and
yeah, I think it was 5 weeks at Hampshire, then another 2 or 3 weeks at Manchester, and then maybe a week at home, and then back to Manchester for another couple of weeks, and back to Hampshire for another couple of weeks. I missed all the 4-day cricket for Gloss, so I think that was probably the one summer where I learned so much about my game and experienced so much amazing stuff that it actually didn't hit me that hard, sort of what actually I was doing. The being locked up, the being sort of isolated didn't hit me probably as hard as some people, because I was just so happy that I was in that environment and learning all that stuff. So it probably wasn't until that winter where I went away again that it became really sort of quite difficult in and around, obviously, that good stuff as well.
Yeah, off quoted, I think, was it Josh Butler in a 12-month period had a whole month of a year when he was in a hotel room, I think, in total.
Yeah.
You went on the field once, and because you get a catch, didn't you, in one of the tests?
Yeah, I went on sort of a few times, sort of for a few overs at a time, and then Popey got injured, I think, diving for a ball, so I ended up fielding for maybe 30 or 40 overs at the end of the last test, third test. And I remember first time I touched the ball, I threw 4 overthrows off of Anderson, so that didn't go down particularly well. And then, yeah, I took a catch at short leg pretty soon after, so sort of kind of redeemed myself a little bit.
Well, you're not going to get any stick from the crowd, are you?
Exactly. There's absolutely not a soul in sight.
Well, what was it like playing in front of nobody? It must have been so hard for people to lift themselves.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, and we don't get that many watching us play 4-day cricket at county level, but I imagine what it was like for those guys who have played a lot of Test cricket and are used to sort of that atmosphere, and then it's sort of taken away. It must be, and having now seen it, it's just completely alien. It was a bit bizarre.
Yeah, it was wonderful for us at home. We're in lockdown here watching cricket on the TV, but to actually play like a club game with, and literally nobody there, it must have been unreal, really. Yeah, it was very strange. And I sort of, if it hadn't been look up and see it was, Broad, Anderson, Root and Stokes running around, you would have genuinely thought it was a club game, because apart from the groundsman and the umpires, there was no one else from outside of obviously our group. You said you played one county championship game, or it was a Bob Willis Trophy game for Gloucestershire, and I noticed that game got called off because of a break in sort of COVID or something, didn't it? Yeah, some of the Northants players picked it up, and had been, I think it was, the guy who'd picked it up, his two flatmates were both playing as well, and it was the whole hoo-ha about who was in contact and whatever, and I think they just called it a day because of that. But yeah, it only lasted about, I think, a session, and then that was done as well. So it was a pretty short-lived summer for me. But we had the T20 after that, so it wasn't all bad. This was a T20 that nearly finished in I think it finished in October, didn't it? Yeah, it did, and we ended up having to play final. It was the 1 year we made it to finals day. Obviously, no people there, and it got taken to a reserve day because of the weather. Then it ended up being like a 10-over game because of the weather. So, it was a bit disappointing having got there. One, having no crowd there on finals day, but also, to be reduced as well was a bit annoying.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Big box retailers, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a bill in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. Senate Bill 1838 would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, visit handsoffmyrewards.com and tell them to oppose credit card routing legislation paid for by the Electronic Payments Coalition.
Well, 2021, you started the season with scores of 54, 14, 118, 83 not out, 65, 9, 75, 13 and 1. So you got 4 50s and 1 ton in 6 games. And you got selected for England. Were you surprised that you got selected? Yeah,
a little bit. I don't think you ever expect to get the call. But, I was confident having spent that much time around the group, and had some positive feedback, and then starting the season well against some good sides. I knew there was going to be some selection changes because of the IPL and people going there and who was available, etc., etc. I knew Joss wasn't going to be there. I knew Johnny wasn't going to be there. So I was always hopeful that I'd be there as sort of a backup batter who could be the backup keeper as well. And luckily, got the call, so I was in the 15.
But as you said, you were selected as a batsman, weren't you? Then Ben Folkes had that freak injury. Yeah,
I was picked as a batter. So I assumed that I would be the batter on the bench, which I was absolutely fine with. But knew that obviously I was the only other keeper in the squad as well, and had a call from Chris Silverwood maybe 3 or 4 days before we were meeting up to say that Folkes had slipped over and torn his hammy, that they weren't bringing another keeper in especially. So that I'd basically without saying that I'd be playing, which was crazy. I mean, it was quite nice to know a few days prior to going, but all that time to play it over in my head as well was pretty surreal.
So what were your thoughts about keeping wicket and batting at number 7?
I didn't really have any, negative thoughts towards it. I was like, well, I'm a number 3 batter, batting at number 7. It's going to be a slightly different time of the innings, slightly different tempo. But if I've got the skills to bat at 3 and they think I've got the skills to bat at 3, then, when the ball's a little bit older at number 7, hopefully I'll be able to adapt pretty quickly. The keeping, a lot of people sort of say now, I was too inexperienced and this sort of stuff. But I think the amount of work I'd done on it and how confident I was with how I'd kept the start of that season, I was really happy. I was pretty confident that I could do a job. And even now, I got quite a bit of criticism at the time, but I still look back on it and I've looked at all the figures and the stats and all this sort of stuff. And I still stand by the fact that I don't think I did that badly.
Lords is a difficult place to keep wicket, though, isn't it?
It is very difficult. And I think the last away game we played before that test match was at Lords. So I had a little bit of a taste of it, obviously, with it not being Broad and Anderson and Robinson. But, our bowlers at Gloss are pretty, they know what they're doing as well. And it was very tricky. So I knew that it was going to be a challenge. But it was nice to get that little bit of taste of it before getting there as well.
How much of a difference was it playing Test cricket compared to playing for Gloucestershire? That might seem obvious, but from a player's perspective.
Yeah, I think you play against Test cricketers in county cricket regularly, and you can see the quality that they have. I think from a batting point of view, it's just precision. Your mistakes are capitalised on, a lot more often. With the gloves, I think it's just more, that the eyes are on you, and that brings a certain pressure that you just don't get with county cricket. And I think, the best players not only, have the skills to play, but they deal with that the best. And, I didn't get off to the best start and probably allowed that to impact my performance more than maybe you see some guys who had just hit the ground running. Take Harry Brook, for example. He's just taken it all in his stride, and obviously he's an incredible batter, but I think he's been pretty level-headed about how he's gone about it as well, which is, a lesson to anyone who's aspiring to go and do it.
Well, Graham Gooch, all those years ago, got a pair in his Test debut, and you got naught, then another naught, and then an 8. So it wasn't a pair, but New Zealand, a very good side at the time.
Yeah, they were. They were number 1 in the world, or they just won, or they would go on to win this Test championship that summer. So, yeah, it was a pretty tough prospect, but I'm still sort of, I am now, got a very different perspective on it in terms of, I've done it. I've played Test cricket, which is incredible in itself. And if I was to go back, I'd sort of have a lot better way of dealing with it, and matured a lot because of it.
And were friends and family there to watch you?
Yeah, they were. So my grandparents, my parents, my brother, my partner as well. They all got their day one of that first Test, which was great. And then, they all swapped and changed over depending on, work and stuff for the next, 9 days that there was games on. Managed to get a couple of friends to come. My brother and dad chose to play their own cricket on the Saturdays, so they didn't come then. But the rest, they were all really keen, and they were buzzing to be there for it.
Still must give you great pride, and give the family great pride to say you played Test cricket for England. Yeah,
exactly. And I think it's one of those things that now, it's now that it's sort of settled in, and I've sort of got over the that actually happened. I think now, I keep my cap in my room and I see it, and I'm just like, not many people get one of those, and it's pretty cool to know that, I've grown up aspiring to play for England, and that I've done it, so early in my career was a real achievement.
Yeah, because only 3 years before that, you were playing for Loughborough MCCU.
Yeah, and exactly. It just shows how, it happens quickly, but then it can also drop off quickly, and it's a very sort of turbulent game. So, even though take now, it feels like I'm, that bit further away, that can all happen so quickly.
And was it tough when you went back to play for Gloucestershire? Did it affect you, the Test career?
Yeah, I think it did, sort of on and off for maybe sort of a year, 18 months. It sort of damaged my confidence a little bit, but also, when you play for England, it feels like you should go back to county cricket and absolutely dominate, because, in your own head, and other people probably think that, if he's playing international cricket, he should be, be sort of above the average here. And it's not that easy, because, county cricket's a different beast to Test cricket in terms of, yes, it's a level down, but it's also relentless, and there are extremely good cricketers there. So you just got to try and stay level-headed, which, it probably took me a few weeks to adjust to that and rediscover my confidence that I'd lost throughout those couple of games. But yeah, I think end of last year, it really started to kick into gear again. And I feel sort of totally revamped as a player, which is exciting going into this year.
And England-wise, how was the England coach at the time, Chris Silverwood? Did he get good feedback? Was there sort of some support mechanism in place after you were then not picked for the next side?
Yeah, they sort of explained their decision not to pick me for the next series. And, with Lions tours and other bits and bobs coming up after that, they were in sort of regular contact about those. I played on the Lions the winter after, which was, a big confidence booster in terms of, knowing that I'm still in favour and in their thoughts. And then, thereafter it's, you don't get calls every couple of weeks because obviously there's loads of players in their plans and, there's lots of games and cricket happening, but it's one of those where, their doors are always open. And if you ever want to ask any questions or speak about anything, I've never had any problem getting hold of those people to have those conversations, which is kind of all you want.
Well, that's good to hear. And you read my notes because I put confidence boost ? After the selection for the England Lions when you scored this is in 2021, isn't it? December 2021.
Yeah.
And you got a century and you got runs against Scott Boland as well.
Yeah, that was just before he then got called up and obviously tore us apart on Boxing Day. So again, looking back at that, it was a good attack. I think Swepson as well since has played for Australia, and obviously Nessa as well. So yeah, another good attack that I was able to, not only hold my own against, but put in a good performance. And it's one of those that, again, I can look back on those highlights and look back on that experience and think, well, it doesn't get too much harder than that without, getting back into the test arena. So I definitely know I can still do it. And that was, a really good trip to sort of start the winter off.
And then last season, 2022, 702 first-class runs, 47 catches, 4 stumpings, but you're included in the PCA Men's Team of the Year, but Gloucestershire are relegated.
Yeah, bit of a mixed year. Yeah, I think we got off to obviously a pretty slow start. I think probably got, some of us more experienced players didn't. Like myself, didn't probably get the runs I was hoping for after a really, really quick start. And yeah, we just sort of, it was one of the things, I think we just got into a habit of losing. We would, for 3 out of 4 days, we were putting up, real efforts and really even games. And then having just sort of manic sessions where we'd lose 5 or 6 wickets really quickly or let the opposition get away from us. And, it just meant that a few games that we should have won, we ended up losing, or a few games that we should have drawn, we ended up losing. And we learned that, those draws are really important in Division 1 because those extra points all add up to keeping you up, which we weren't used to. I think in Division 2, it's all about you got to win because otherwise you're not going up and there's obviously no relegation. So yeah, that dynamic was slightly different. And we're hoping that, if we can get promoted this year, we'll take that learning forward.
Well, you ended last year well because you won the last 2 matches, didn't you? So are you confident you can get back up this year?
Yeah, for sure. I think the feeling around the group at the end of last year was awesome. We're trying to harness that a lot moving forward this year. That sort of shift in mentality. And, it was good to shake up the relegation pack like we did at the end of the year.
And who do you think are your main rivals in Division 2?
Obviously, Yorkshire coming down, I think. Especially with the likes of Bairstow available early season. They've signed Milnes. They've obviously got Bess and Lythe and quite a few experienced players. So they're going to be good. I think Durham obviously look pretty strong as well. Their bowling attacks got a lot of experience. Obviously Potts, Cast in around the England setup, and obviously Lee's up the top of the order. They look pretty strong. So I'd probably say those 2. But I also think Glamorgan as well, first game, they look like a pretty good side as well. So I think there's a few who could put their name in the hat. It just depends on who gets the quick start.
And are you still vice captain?
I am, yeah. From what I know, anyway. So
I'm sure you are.
I've sort of on and off sort of done a bit of that. Obviously, I think Higo did it a bit for most of last year. GV's obviously done a great job skippering. It's something that I'd like to, pursue in the future. But, having that vice role at the moment is great. I love the added leadership responsibilities. Nice. And it's good to, even though I'm not old yet, I'm able to contribute a bit of experience to the group.
So is that something you relish, being captain, wicket keeping, and say batting three? It's a lot to do.
I think that's something that probably isn't feasible. I think batting three and keeping I've found hard enough, and I'm still trying to work that one out. As much as I like doing it, I think adding the captaincy as well would mean probably having to sacrifice one of those, which further down the line I can think more about.
And what do you think to the new point structure? Because there's 250 now for the first point this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we struggled obviously last year to get batting points, but I think it's good. It sort of sets a sort of higher standard, and I think a lot of teams are going to go out chasing those big points by scoring a bit quicker. It'll be interesting to see how much that affects how people approach it.
And generally, are you in favour of keeping the county championship 14 matches? I know you've got the 8 teams in the Division 2. You wouldn't want to see the county championship reduced?
I wouldn't personally. I understand why people do, because it is a really, really hectic schedule. But I've just never known any different. I like 14 games. I like that it's a real grind. I like that it's a real slog. I like that, you're going to have really, really tough periods where you've got to, grit your teeth and get into it. And I like that, it's a real test of, who really is the best 4-day side. I think, a period of 5 or 6 games can win you a championship if it's 10 games. Whereas, you've got to perform really well for 10, 11 games if you're going to win one of those divisions at the moment.
And personally, do you set yourself targets? Is it 1,000 runs that you'd like to get?
I usually do. I haven't actually this year. I've made a bit of a conscious effort not to, because in previous years, I always say, I want to get 1,000 runs, but always come up just short. And, not that I've had bad years, but I've sort of not done as well as I'd like. I think this year I've set a few more goals around, how I approach the game, how I deal with the pressures of it, and how I can, help the team best often. Obviously, I'd love to go out and average 50 and, hit 500 and score 1,000 runs. That'd be great. And I think that'll still subconsciously be there, and I want to do that. But I think most of my goals are probably more around my approach and my enjoyment of the cricket.
And still the aim with your performances, to get back in the England side.
Yeah, for sure. I think actually since playing, that sort of priority has shifted from, I did everything to get into the side and play for those 18 months during COVID. And then I've come out the other side and, I want to get back in the team, but it's probably more of I think with the shift in their mentality in the test side now as well, it's more about, they want to pick match winners. They want to pick guys who are going to win games for their team. So if I can set my sights on, right, how are we going to win games as a team at Gloss? And, if I'm a part of that, I'm going to be contributing to a winning side, which puts you in the shop window.
So what do you think to Bazball?
I love it. It's great to watch. I think having watched for the last year, it's awesome. And I just think, as someone who's been in the environment when it wasn't quite as free and quite as, successful as it is now, I can't even imagine what it's like to have that level of backing and just be able to go out and play and actually feel like you're not going to be judged for how you get out or how you score your runs. It seems unreal, really. So, fair play to McCullum and Stokes for really revamping it and remodelling Test cricket. Essentially, it's been awesome.
Would you agree it would have been hard to revamp in the sort of stage and era you played in with COVID all around, to actually have done it then, sort of thing?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's also, just, the players that they've got available, and I think Stokes' input will be massive. I think his character obviously has just come shining through, and him paired with McCullum is just, no one's surprised that they've gone down that route. I think, when I was playing, it was a little bit more conservative. I think route, not that that's a bad way of looking at it, like Root and Silverwood, it was about batting long, batting big, being boring for, the first few days and trying to set it up and take it, later into the game. That was sort of how they looked at it, which, worked on occasions, didn't work on occasions. And, Stokes and McCullum have gone down a completely different route, which, they're going to win games, they're going to lose games at some point, but they've, created an acceptance that that's okay, which it's the same as, as a batter. You're going to get out, and it's just being able to say, that's all right, but I'm going to do everything I can before that to score the runs we need.
Well, as a fan, it's fantastic to watch.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I'm still just like, there seems to be something happening in every game that's just ridiculous.
So what do you think our chances in the men's and the women's Ashes this summer?
The women's, I'm quietly confident. I know the Australia are obviously the dominant force and have been for a while, but we've had Michael Bates in working with me on my keeping at Gloucester. I've been speaking to him about it, and he's confident that now they've got the players in order to do it. They've just got to find the way of getting those performances in at the right time. And they've obviously got some incredible players coming through. So yeah, I'm confident about that, but it'll be tough for them. Men's, I think we're gonna do them. We're gonna beat them. I think everyone's been worried the whole time that we've been winning and playing in this manner, and everyone's loved it. But they've all been saying, everyone's been like, well, Australia will be a different kettle of fish. Their attack and in English conditions, and that sort of stuff. But I just think the players are so high on confidence that I think they're going to get through it. And I think the bowling attack's good enough to obviously cause a lot of problems as well.
So you'll be giving Marcus Harris plenty of stick then, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I must push you then for a score prediction of these 5 matches.
Well, I don't think there'll be many draws. I'm sure there'll be a game where weather will probably cut them short. So I'll go with 3-1 England.
Well, Australia haven't won in England since 2001, so there's every chance.
There is every chance, definitely.
Well, James, thank you very much for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion. The best of luck for the new season. I hope it warms up and dries up for next week's first game against Glamorgan.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully, with more runs, you'll get back in that England side.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at The Pad and Pad. Don't forget, if you like the show, please do leave us a rating and review.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
A fraction of a raindrop, 3 grains of salt. At up to 100 times more potent than morphine, the tiniest amount of illegal fentanyl is all it takes to cause an overdose. Fentanyl can be mixed into heroin, cocaine, pressed pills, meth, and other drugs. It could be in your drugs, and you wouldn't be able to see it, taste it, or smell it. Learn more at cdc.gov/stop overdose.